So we are going to proceed and look at the next object, which is called the hatch. And the hatch is actually at this particular point within the draw panel. There's a down drop there and you can click on it. And after you click, you're going to note that we have the option of adding a hatch, or else we have the option of adding a gradient. Now, in this case, we are concerned with both of them, and we are going to cover them together because they are actually very related. Now, to start with, I'm going to click at the hatch, and it is important we note that after you activate the hatch, we are going to have this particular kind of a menu that is going to pop up. Of course, that is contrary to other objects, especially the 2D object. It is contrary to that, but of course with this particular hatch we have this kind of a menu that displays. So the information that we have in this particular menu is actually information to set up the hatch. Something we should note about this particular hatch is that they are actually created within a boundary. So you need to have boundaries so that you can be in a position to be you can be in a position to add this kind of patterns, which of course they could be the solid pattern, the patterns themselves, or else they can be the gradient, as we are going to see each of that. Now, here, something else that we should note is that you have different options of defining the boundaries. So remember, these boundaries could be polylines, they could be regions, as long as they're actually enclosed boundaries. And even, let's just conclude that they are boundaries created by the various line works and as well as the regions. Now, there is there are two main ways of creating or picking the boundary where you want the hatch to be. And one of them is picking the points, which of course is the easiest and the fastest. So you can click at this point, and by default, you're going to note that the pick points is the one that is going to be there by default. And now you just need to hover the cursor of a certain boundary, and now you can note that you're going to have the preview of what you expect. And once you have the preview like that, you can proceed and click as long as it is actually popping up. So one of the options is picking points, and now because I'm using, I think the kind of pattern here, we can proceed with the solid pattern just for illustration. And with this one, I pick point, so I just need to proceed and click for the hatch to be added. And of course, once you are done, you can click on close here, or else you can press escape on your keyboard. And now you can see we have a solid fill, which of course is a hatch. Now, let me proceed and delete this particular hatch. I'm going to delete it. And then we proceed back to the hatch tool, and then we activate it. And we've said that you can pick points. The next option that you have is to select. So here you select the boundaries. For example, I can click at this one, and then you can be in a position to select the boundary. For example, I'm concerned with this one. I can select the boundary like that. And then once you are clear, you can proceed and place escape on your keyboard, or else hit on the green tick from this point. So let me undo that. And then we proceed back to the hatch. Now, we've said that we have different kinds of patterns from what you can see from this point. And one of the patterns that we have here, in fact, is not a pattern, is a hatch type. The first one is called the solid. So these are kind of a hatch that is quite, of course, it's a solid. And after you choose the solid, you can proceed and choose the hatch color for this solid. So currently it is by layer. And once you choose by layer, you can note that the color defined by this layer is actually the dark color. You can proceed and choose any of this color from this point, or else you can choose by block. Now remember, we said that by block we have only two options or two types. We have the white or we have the black. Remember, for the white, you're going to have white. You're going to have color of by block to be white when the background is dark, and you're going to have the color by block dark if you have the background as white, as we have in this particular project or in this particular window. We can see that the background is white, and then by block it is going to be the dark color. You have the option of choosing the suitable color that you want from this point, or else click at more colors so that you can open the color selector, and here you can select the color that you want. So you choose the solid as the hatch type, and then you choose the color. From this point I can choose color, and now you can note that we have that kind of a fill. Now that is called a solid fill. We also have the option of adding a gradient fill, and normally a gradient fill is actually a combination of two colors. So in this case, you choose the first color from this point. For example, I may want this color, and then you choose another color or the second color from this point. And now you can proceed and hover the cursor, and you can note that we have this kind of a gradient created. So that is another kind of hatch that we can create. I'm going to delete it, and then you can proceed back to the hatch. The next hatch type, we have the pattern. So click at the pattern, and then for the pattern you need to choose a pattern. We have a number of patterns that are actually predefined, and to view all the patterns you need to proceed and click at this point. So there is an expansion, the option of expanding here, so you can click at that particular button, and now you can see that we have these patterns, and now you can proceed and scroll. So you can proceed and click at this particular point to expand, and then you can proceed and scroll to see all the patterns. Again, I can proceed at this point, and then I click and drag to expand the various patterns, and they are here. There is a number of them that you can use. So you just need to choose any of these, and you can use them as the pattern. Now note that within these patterns we have the gradient, and also we have the solid. So you can either choose the hatch type from this point, or else you can choose from this point, or else you can proceed and use this particular point, so where you can click to expand, and you can choose whether to have a solid, a gradient, or a pattern hatch type. Now in this case we are concerned with the pattern, so we choose the pattern, and then from this point you need to choose the kind of pattern that you want to use. Let me, for example, proceed and use this one, ANC SI31. So that is the kind of hatch that I want. I can now proceed and hover the cursor. Now note there is the color here, so this is usually the color of the hatch. We are going to see that. Now you should note that we have a pattern here. Yes, we have chosen this kind of a pattern. This is what we expect, but of course it seems that it is showing a solid fill. The reason for that is because of the scale. So probably in this case, let me choose a scale of about 50. Remember, this is a pattern, it is not a solid fill, and in this case we increase the fill, or we increase the scale from this point, so that you can be in a position to see the correct thing. So click at this point once again, and now you can see that we have some lines. Yeah, so the reason it was showing as if it is a solid pattern, it is because of the scale here, which of course was very close. So we can have about 100 in this case, and with 100 I can proceed and activate it once again, and now you can see we have that kind of a pattern. So that is it, and we should note that. So we have a scale at this point. So if you choose a pattern as the hatch type, you have the option of choosing the pattern type. From this point you can expand, and also after you choose the pattern you can choose the scale. If the scale here is very small, you're going to note that the pattern itself is going to show as if it's a solid fill. So in this case you need to make sure that the scale is the correct scale, or it's a scale that is actually showing the pattern itself. So let me proceed and change the pattern. So that is another pattern, and now you can view it. I can choose this pattern. Remember, we have the scale here. You can change it. I can have 200 as the scale. Choose this pattern, and also you can choose any of these pattern that we have here. So probably I may want to create such kind of a pattern. So with 200, this of course is very large, and the pattern is not going to display fully, so we can proceed and reduce it to about 30. So with 30 we can be in a position to see the pattern. Again, we have the patterns. They are made up of lines. There are 2D lines. You can change the color from this point. So for example, I may want a dark color, and now we can view that. So let me proceed and turn the display of grids off so that you can view the pattern clearly. So there we have the pattern. So I'm going to proceed and select the pattern, and I'll proceed at this point, click, and then we choose another pattern, and then you can choose the scale. Probably in this case we can have about 15 for the scale. So that is it. So if you find that you're adding a pattern and the pattern is not displaying anything, try to adjust the scale, try to increase the scale. If you add a pattern and then you note that it is showing as if it's a solid fill, proceed and increase the scale. But of course, if you find that the pattern is actually not showing with the scale that you have here, proceed and reduce the scale. So that is also something that we should take care of. So that is how we work with this particular pattern. We've said that we have three kinds of hatch patterns. We have the solid, the gradient, and also the pattern. And then we have said that you add patterns to closed regions, or you add patterns to closed boundaries. For example, we have this kind of a boundary. This is a circle. Again, you can proceed and add a pattern to this circle. So let me proceed and activate the hatch once again. You can proceed and add a pattern, as you can see. We can also add a pattern to a region. So as you can see, we have that kind of a pattern.